Okay. Welcome, everyone. My name is Javier Fernández-Salvador. I am the Executive Director for the Olive Center at the University of California, Davis. And it's a pleasure to be here today and welcome you to the Roundtable of Agriculture and Climate Change. We have the format that will follow today is each participant will have 15 minutes to present on their topic of expertise, and then we'll open the floor for questions for 5 minutes. So I will hold you participants for the 15 minutes that we have. Okay, I'll give you these and then you can pass on your slides. And then at the end of the individual presentations, we will start the roundtable and ask the panel about the perspectives on climate change issues regarding olive production, and let the public interact with their different questions that you have on a Q&A format. So first, we will start with Mounir, and let me do a quick introduction. Abichou Mounir is an agronomist engineer from ESSAC and has a master's in the fight against desertification and sustainable management of resources in arid environments, a doctor in agronomic sciences, and his specialty is agriculture in arid zones and fight against desertification. Since 1998, he has occupied the post of engineering assistant professor and senior lecturer at the Olive Tree Institute. He focuses mainly in agronomic and pedoclimatic research and teaching climate change classes. Abichou has provided training and facilitated workshops on the olive sector, has provided supervision of works of master's thesis students, as well as engineering products, and coordinates and is a member of various national and international research projects and evaluator of proposals and scientific journal articles. Welcome, Abichou, and let's get you started.
Thank you, Javier.
Should take it.
Let me see these works. There we go. And just use these to move your slides.
Yes, thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Javier. And in the first day, thank the University of Higher.
We are now going to start with Giorgios, and I want to know if I'm pronouncing your last name right.
Yes.
Koumpouris, right?
Koumpouris.
Okay, great. He's a researcher at the Hellenic agricultural organization Elgo-Dimitra, focusing on olive growing. He's an agronomist with a master's in tree propagation and a PhD in crossbreeding mechanisms and olive physiology in relation to abiotic stresses. He is currently the lead researcher at the Olive Laboratory, and he has published over 50 papers and participated in over 35 research projects. He is a scientific leader for the project Olive Clima, and was awarded the best project for climate action in Europe by the European Commission. He's a member of the editorial board and international scientific journals, and has been invited as an expert by the European Commission on multiple international governments and committees. He chaired the session on management of tree crops to tackle climate change at the international conference ELS in 2014, and he was the president of the International Conference on Climate Change and Agriculture. Thank you, Giorgios.
Thank you, Javier. Thank also the organizers for hosting this very outstanding and very well organized meeting. It's a pleasure to be here and see all these interesting lectures throughout the day. So the title of my presentation is Olive Crop Management Practices for Adaptation to Climate Change, and also for mitigation of its effects. So the overall idea is that the farmer can be active and has the power to have a double role in the olive groves. The first role is that through proper management of the olive grove, the olive trees can be more resilient to environmental difficulties, to environmental stresses. We can make, it's like improving their health, and they are more strong in case something unpleasant happens. The second part is that, again, through proper management of the olive groves, we can mitigate climate change effects. And this is mainly focused on carbon fluxes, carbon balance, and carbon storage in the olive agroecosystem. So it's not only the olive tree, it's not only the soil, it's the agroecosystem, which includes many functions inside this beautiful landscape. So I work in Greece for the Hellenic Agricultural Organization, something that makes our life and our work very efficient, in my opinion, is that there are units throughout Greece, so we have feedback and information by farmers and by local authorities throughout in different areas, in different climates and different problems. And also, there are 3 branches that collaborate in this organization: the research branch that produces new data, the training of farmers branch, so that this new data pass to the farmers through seminars, and also the certification branch, that when we want to say about a good environmental performance, we can certify it. When we have organic agriculture, we can certify it. So this is a triple role which has a supplemental role. More specifically, I am in the island of Crete, in the Institute of Olive Tree, Subtropical Crops and Viticulture. This institute has 5 departments, 2 in Crete, 1 in Lesbos Island, and 1 in Peloponnese, and 1 in Athens. So we cover most of the main olive growing parts of Greece. And this also gives us a strong tool for research and for practical treatments. We maintain the national collection of olive varieties of Greece, and we participate in the network of olive variety collections of the International Olive Council. And this network of the International Olive Council is again a great infrastructure and a great tool, not only for the members of the network that share knowledge, share genetic resources that are suitable for harsh environments, but also for the whole world to benefit from this network, benefit from the IOC, and take knowledge and take training and information. Regarding climate change, what we recently did is, since we observed that almost every year in different areas of Greece, and also in different areas of Mediterranean, every year we have an environmental problem, environmental stress for the olive trees. One year it may be hot air during flowering in the spring that destroys the flowers. Another year it may be heat stress during summer that stresses the plant growth and also reduces the oil accumulation. Another year there may be harsh environment during autumn. We want to collect data for all the areas, so we planted the 20 major olive varieties of Greece in 3 different environments, in Crete, in Peloponnese, and in Mytilene, in the same time, the same plants, under the same growing conditions. So this is a living experiment, an observatory that we can collect data no matter what the climate is. We can say, okay, these are the climatic conditions, and let's see the response of the olive varieties, and give information to the farmers and to the policy makers, to people to adapt to these difficult conditions. Climate change challenges olive cultivation. We all know it, and we have evidence, and we can see it, mainly through water shortage. Sometimes through floods. We have great disasters also through floods. Extreme temperature is in our daily agenda. UVB radiation used to be very popular when we discussed about the ozone depletion and the ozone hole, and this is what UVB radiation comes from. Soil degradation, soil erosion, desertification. We see soil getting poorer and poorer. I was impressed by the landscape in a few areas on our way here that I saw olive trees and not a sign of natural vegetation underneath, which just bare soil. And I think this is a sign of soil degradation. This is something to worry about, and this is something that could be improved. And this is also related to the biodiversity decline, the next stressor. How can we talk about biodiversity when we have empty soil, when we have a single olive variety through thousands of hectares and no plant underneath? This is zero biodiversity. And also pests and diseases that were insignificant in the past, were no problem for the farmer. Now, through the climatic changes, they become epidemics, they become they create great disasters in the olive growth and also for the yields. We see many phases of climate change, and we don't know every year what to expect and how to protect our olive groves. These three risk maps, in the case of Greece, show two things. The first thing is that we have many areas threatened by drought, by soil erosion, and by flood, many areas of the country. And the second part, which is even more interesting, is that the same area may be under risk of drought, of water deficit in summer, and of flood, of water excess in the winter. So this is crazy. In the same area, excess of water one season, limitation of water in the other. So this gives us the signal that climate change is very complex. It's a very complex condition. It's not a simple thing. Also, climate change give us the signal, give us the message that the farmers can be a part of the solution, as Jaime said earlier, that olive trees and olive farmers can be the part of the solution as long as we act and we do things. It's not rocket science. We can suggest here very simple practices that the farmers can implement and make their olive groves a climate change mitigation tool. Also, consumers are more and more aware of the environmental problems and more interested in buying products that contribute to a better environment. For example, this study and many other studies have documented that burning the olive tree pruning residue is a huge source of negative gases to the atmosphere. So, as Mounir said also earlier, we could avoid burning and we could recycle this material. So, in the last 10 years, through several projects, through collaboration with farmers group, we don't do experiments in a lab or in our field. We do practical applications with farmers groups, with tens and hundreds of olive farms around Greece. So we have solutions that are customized for the farmers. And the main ideas is to recycle the organic materials we have in the olive production cycle. So we measure the carbon that is removed through olive oil production, and we try to put it back in the olive agro-ecosystem. This is a general idea. Either by recycling the fresh biomass or by composting this material, which has some advantages because the material is more mature and more ready to contribute to the olive tree nutrition. Another very simple application is cover crops. We use a mixture of cover crops, a mixture of seeds, or legumes, but not only legumes, a mixture of plants, which contribute by absorbing nitrogen from the air and storing it in the soil. So it's a natural fertilizer. So we can reduce the industrial fertilizer inputs, and also they contribute very well in the health and the microbiological health and richness of the soil, and also protect from erosion, and has multiple benefits. We avoid soil tillage, or we minimize. We do either no tillage at all or as less as possible. This is very important for soil protection, and we also modify the olive tree pruning in order for the tree to be more productive with less diseases, because we have sun and air inside, and also more efficient in carbon storage in the plant tissues. This again has multiple roles. One occasion that we applied all these practices was the project Life Olive Klima. This lasted for 5 years in 4 olive growing areas of Greece, in 120 parcels with many, many olive growers. And we had irrigated and raised olive groves. We had organic and integrated. We have a huge variability, so to prove that we can apply this practice efficiently under different occasions, to prove that any farmer can do it in his or her own conditions. It's not, in a glass vial. It's not in a laboratory application. And this is the project that was mentioned earlier that was awarded as the best project in Europe by the European Commission. Also, this continues for the next 5 years in the Prima Sustainoli project, which is coordinated by the University of Jaén, and this is also in many Mediterranean areas. And what we saw, let's see some results to start seeing what happens. What are you talking about here? Does it make any sense? We measured the carbon returned to the olive groves through organic material recycling. So we recycled the compost of all the residue of an olive meal. Whatever is left in the olive meal after taking the olive oil, we composted it and we recycled it to the olive grove. We recycled the pruning residue. We did the cover crops, and the control was a soil that was tilled, soil tillage, and no organic material addition. And we saw very important storage in the carbon, especially in the superficial soil, because we avoided soil tillage that would bury the organic material. Highest values were observed when all the practices were applied together. So the basic idea I would like to pass to you is that not only one practice, I do one thing and everything gets better. We have to have a holistic, overall olive grove management. We have to see everything linked together and improve all our practices to have a good result. Change the mentality. Is not like the industrial fertilizer, take fertilizer, put it in the soil, improve nitrogen. Changing the mentality that the olive grove is a miracle, and we can treat it very well, and we can have, again, very high benefits for us and the environment. Also, addition of organic materials improved water retention in two cases. During winter, having all these organic materials on the soil surface contributed that the water of the rain was infiltrated in the soil and stored. Otherwise, in the bare soil, it was left, it was superficially went away from the olive grove. Also, during summer, when we irrigated and we had no rainfall, again, the water of the irrigation was protected by the covered soil by the mulching, and it was not evaporated. In contrast, in the bare soil, we had a lot of evaporation. So we have higher rainfall water stored in the winter, higher irrigation water stored in the summer. All this, okay, I will go faster. All this through cover of the soil with organic materials. Soil microbial properties were improved by sustainable management. You see here some basic microbiological analysis that we did. You see total bacteria, proteolytic bacteria. You see Azotobacter, Actinomyces. This is some indicators of the microbiological richness, diversity, and microbiological health of the soil. So we see very positive results. We saw also positive results in mycorrhizal colonization of the roots of this agroecosystem. So we see that something happens here. We see a lot of results that puzzle together. They say to us something good is happening here. We have multiple benefits, not only olive yields, not only soil carbon, it's a lot of things get improved. Now we're talking about olive yield because the farmer says, come on, what are you saying? Climate change and environment and all this stuff. I want money, and this is olive yield. Olive yield was stabilized through the whole improved production system. We say that everything changed, and we saw that in the first years we had fluctuation of the olive yields, and then as years passed through the good application, we have stabilized yields. So this counts for the farmer. If you suggest something that is good for the environment, it should also be good for the pocket of the farmer. 2 ways to recycle pruning residue, through chipper shredder and through flail lawn mower, meaning that it may be more well-trimmed or not. A few words because we don't have much time. And the differences are the decomposition rate can be faster or slower. The nutrient recycling can be faster or slower again. And the carbon storage it can be, when the nutrient recycling is faster, carbon storage is not so long. So you have to, maybe we select if we want long-term carbon storage, or if we want fast nutrient releasing the soil. Or we can have a balance. We can have a balance that slowly, year after year, nutrients are recycled and carbon stored. This is, again, achievable. The compost recycling in the olive groves, they say that one picture is 1,000 words, and we saw that locally, where the compost was applied, we saw huge growth of the weeds, meaning that nitrogen and nutrients were there. So we have a lot of rich nutrients in this compost that was put back and available also for the olive trees. Here we see that cover crops improved also the nitrogen, improved carbon storage, and improved the biodiversity. We had a more rich agroecosystem. Biodiversity plays a key role in agroecosystem resilience. We insist in this part, and we saw that wrong weed management resulted in single species dominance. With herbicides, we see that all the weeds are vanished, and we see maybe one very tolerant weed that covers all the place. This is not good. So with good soil management, we have multi-species soil cover. This is what we would like to see. We would like to see diversity. We would like to see many living organisms in our olive grove, not only one. Diversity in the agroecosystem is health. This is something good. Let's create an agroecosystem with diversity. Listen to this, watch these pictures about tillage induced soil erosion. See how much soil has been lost through tillage in this picture. This is amazing, this is shocking. It's almost half a meter of soil lost, and this soil will never go back. This is huge disaster for the, not only for the olive grove, for the whole area, there are many off-site effects. It's a huge chapter, we cannot analyze it here, but this is crazy. On the other hand, you can see when you have the cover crops and a lot of natural vegetation during the rainy period, this is a key element. We leave this vegetation during the rainy period where there is no competition for water with the trees. We don't leave this vegetation during the summer when you have a limitation in water. This is, again, a difference when you have, during the rainy period, soil covered by weeds which protect the soil, or an empty soil that will have less water, higher water and fertilizer runoff. We also have soil erosion. So this is, again, one picture, 1,000 words. Effect on olive meal wastewater recycling on earthworms. Again, by recycling this material, we studied soil properties and everything, and also an indicator of soil health, which is earthworms. This is a very important indicator of what happened in the soil. And we saw that no negative effects were imposed by applying the olive meal wastewater. Not only the soil can be enriched, and you have a good source of nutrients and a healthy agroecosystem, But you can also have a commercial exploitation. You can trim your pruning residue and prepare pellets for heating and sell it. So there are many options that could provide the farmer with additional income, provide the farmer with several solutions. Through this project, Gear for Olive, a European project, we study genetic resources for adaptation to climate change. So maybe we can find a olive variety which is suitable for this environment, another olive variety suitable for another environment with an environmental stress. So, in conclusion, the organic byproducts of olive growing are very useful in many ways. We have encouraging results of carbon and nitrogen storage in the soil. We have to optimize the practice and the management. We have to have an overall management of the olive grove and customize in each area. This is the main idea I would like to share with you, holistic olive grove management. So these are several projects we work, but I will not analyze them now. We have videos on YouTube about good practices together with farms, and with simple guidelines you can observe this. These are free videos to watch. Thank you very much for your time, and we'll be here to discuss with you any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Giorgios. Now we're going to skip the question section in this part, and I will introduce now Dr. Giora Ben-Ari. He is a researcher scientist at the Institute of Plant Sciences, ARO, at the Volcani Center in Israel since 2009. He currently is the head of the Department of Fruit Tree Sciences at the Plant Sciences Institute. He has published over 50 papers and book chapters mainly regarding olive research. For the last decade, he has been responsible for the Israeli olive breeding program. And his team has focused in using DNA markers in order to identify genetic variation between olive cultivars, as well as cultivar identification and paternity analysis in olives. Also, his group is working with compatibility between olive cultivars and table olive harvesting. In the last several years, they have started to study the effect of climate change in olive productivity, especially how high temperatures affect olive production, which is what the presentation will be focusing on today. Thank you, Giora.
Thanks, Javier, and thanks, Roberto. Thanks the organization committee for inviting me. It's a great pleasure and great honor to be here. And today I want to talk to you about the effect of high temperature on the reproductive phase of the olive. As my friends here, Mounir and Giorgios, already mentioned, in the last several years, we see many effects of the climate change on the olive tree physiology. The problem is that every year it's something a bit different. The last year was especially challenging for the Israeli olive sector. And although the last season was an off year, this year, probably because we have high temperature during the winter and during the spring, we also got very low yield in most of Israel, except for the north, when the weather was a bit cooler. So actually, when we look on the high temperature effect, it represses the olive reproductive phase, and high temperature in each season actually affect the performance in the next season, in which high temperature during the winter will affect the flowering, and we'll see less flowering. High temperature during the spring will affect the fruit set, and then we will see less fruit during the summer. And high temperature during the summer will affect the fruit development, oil accumulation, and oil quality, which we see in the harvest in our final product, the olive oil. In order to see if the temperature are really raised, we did just a simple analysis in which we analyze the mean maximum temperature and the mean minimum temperature in the last 20 years in our institute. And we actually separated to different seasons, and as you can see here, according to the trend line, in the winter we got increase in the last 20 years of about 0.5 degrees. However, in the summer, we got more than 1.5 degrees increase in the last 20 years, which is a lot. Here you can see the main olive cultivation area around the Mediterranean. And here you can see the study of Uzdurk et al., who simulate, using a simulation to actually try to guess the temperature that we will feel in 2070 and 2000, between 2070 and 2100. And as you can see here, it's going to increase in all seasons, but especially during the summer. This is June, July, and August. So what we did is actually a bit similar to what Maria presented here. In order to see the effect of the high temperature, we did it a bit simpler. We had our plants in a pot from 5 different cultivars: Barnea, Coratina, Coronaiki, Suri, and Fichulin. We kept it in our institute for the whole winter. And after the spring, after fruit set around May, we divided them into 2 groups and placed one in a very warm location in Tirat Tzvi in the east of Israel, and one in mild temperature region near Jerusalem called Tzuban. This is the temperature during the 3 years of the experiment, and as you can see here, in Tirat Tzvi, which is in red, you can see that almost every day during the summer, we got about 45 degrees maximum during the day, and the difference between the 2 locations is more or less 10 degrees during the day and 5 degrees during the night. And each month we came and sampled some fruit and analyzed the dry fruit weight and the oil percentage of dry fruit. And you can see here an example of 2 cultivars. You can see that the Barnea was pretty resistant to the high temperature in Tirat Tzvi, and you can see that the red line actually got to the same height as the blue line, which means also in the high temperature region, the Barnea got the same fruit size and the same oil accumulation. In contrast, we can see the Coronaiki that showed sensitivity to the high temperature in Tirat Tzvi, and therefore you see the red line below the blue line. And actually in the harvest, the Coronaiki that grew in the high temperature region got much smaller fruit and less oil. Here you can see the histological analysis of the Coronaiki fruit Mesocarp, where the oil drops are stained with gold, and you can see here in the mild temperature region versus the high temperature region, and it's really obvious that the high temperature in Coronaiki repress the oil biosynthesis. We also looked on the oil quality in terms of polyphenols and oleic acid percentage. Sorry, this should be kilogram oil. And we found that in all 5 cultivars, actually the high temperature decreased the polyphenol concentration as well as the oleic acid concentration. But if we look on the Suri cultivar, it looked pretty resistant to high temperature in terms of oil quality. And we can see here that the Suri in Tirat Tzvi in a very warm summer got about 750 milligram per kilogram oil of polyphenol, which is a lot. Again, in contrast, we can look on the Barnea and Fichulin, and the Fichulin in 2017 and the Barnea in 2016 had oleic acid percentage less than 55%, which is, according to the IOC, cannot be identified as olive oil at all. So to summarize the results of this 5 cultivar, we can see that the high temperature resistant, it's actually cultivar dependent. And you can see that the Barnea is resistant in terms of fruit weight and oil accumulation, but sensitive in terms of oil quality. The Suri cultivar is resistant in terms of oil quality. The Coronaiki is sensitive in all three terms, and the Coratina and Fichuline are resistant in terms of oil accumulation, but sensitive in terms of fruit development and oil quality. In order to identify the critical period for the effect, the negative effect of the high temperature, we used the plants from the Suri cultivar, and we took 24 trees, again in pots. We divided them into 6 groups, 4 trees in each group. One group was located in Tsuba for the whole fruit development period. One group was located in Tirat Tzvi, and the other 4 groups spent most of the time in Tsuba and went to Tirat Tzvi only for 1.5 months. Again, we measure all these parameters I mentioned before, and the bottom line is that we found that the critical period for the repression of the high temperature on the olive productivity is between the beginning of July to mid-August, right after the peat hardening. So to summarize this study, we can see that it's cultivar dependent. We can see that the critical period is right here, and therefore, in order to solve it, what we need is, first of all, to screen much more cultivars, okay, and also to try to decrease the temperature here in this critical period in order to help the sensitive cultivar to produce enough yield and quality oil. This is a different study, an ongoing study, which I would like to share with you. And here we're trying to understand the effect of high temperature during the spring, and not during the summer, on the fruit set or olive productivity. So you can see here the different stages in the flower and inflorescence development. And we performed 2 different treatments. One is of moderate chronic stress, which we gave 33 degrees during the day and 29 degrees during the night for the whole inflorescence development periods. The second one was acute stress of only 2 hours with 42 degrees in the beginning of inflorescence development. And here you can see what happened to the pollen. And based on Alexander stain, which we can see the viability of the pollen, you can see in the control that all pollen is viable based on the red color. You can see that the chronic moderate stress completely defected the pollen. And you can see here that the Arbequina was pretty sensitive to the acute stress, whereas Coronaiki was pretty resistant to the same stress. Here you can see the same picture, but it's electronic microscope. And again, you can see in the control that the pollen has a very nice shape. Here in the moderate heat stress, you can see that in both Arbequina and Coronaiki, all the pollen is defected. And in the acute heat shock, you can see that the Arbequina was sensitive and therefore the pollen is defected, whereas in the Coronaiki, the pollen looks very nice. We also try to understand the effect of high temperature during flowering. So flowering is in Israel around April or the beginning of May, and we try to see what happened if there is 2 hours of 45 degrees during flowering. So this is the treatment, and then we put the pollen before or after treatment on agar plate, and put it on 28 degrees for 24 hours and looked on the pollen tube. And you can see that we screen our germplasm collection, consists of about 100 different cultivars, and you can see resistant cultivars, for example, like the Niera de Oleana, but you can see here that, for example, the picual is very sensitive to the 45 degrees during flowering. Actually, like Maria also showed about the reproductive phase. Here you can see really the pollen tube growth, and this is comparison between Manzanillo and Arbequina without or after 2 hours or 45 degrees. You can see that the Manzanillo is very resistant, whereas the Arbequina is very sensitive to this high temperature. So to summarize all this, we saw that high temperature affect all the reproductive phase of the olives, including the flowering, fruit set, fruit growth, oil synthesis, and oil quality. And this is a table we published in our last review. And in one side, you can see the heat-sensitive cultivars. In one side, you see the heat-resistant cultivar. And actually, our main mission or aim is to fill this table, which means to screen much more cultivars in order to identify mainly the heat-resistant cultivar, and maybe we will identify some mega cultivar which show resistance in all different performance. But also, we need to try and find treatments to reduce the maximum temperature in order to help the sensitive cultivar, and of course also to understand the mechanism of the resistant cultivar in order to develop new cultivar which will be resistant to high temperature. And that's it. Thank you very much for listening, and I can now take questions.
Thank you, Giora, and we have a couple of minutes for questions.
Okay, yeah.
Okay, can you bring the microphone to the front, please?
Can I ask George first, Giorgos? What is, from the training that you showed, one of the things that you do is the training. What is the penetration within the farmers? Are you like 10%, 20% adopted? And are they consistent throughout the years?
Yes, I can tell you two observations. The first one is that through these projects, they were participatory with farmers groups, and year after year, people who didn't participate from the beginning in the project, they went in the cooperative and asked, come on, I want to join. I want to join. I will do it with my own resources. So this was impressive that the project helped some farmers, some selected farmers to do the treatments, and other people came and say, okay, I want, show me the guidelines and I will do it with my own resources. So this was very impressive. Also, towards the end of the project, when we had a lot of dissemination work throughout Greece, we saw that there was a new trend that people started to recycle the pruning residue. Burning pruning residue was the rule in Greece, but we saw gradually that there was a trend that people said, oh no, this is bad. So they bought small machines, small mills, and recycled the pruning residue, and they tell us, I saw very good results. I'm very impressed. So it takes a lot of participatory work, a lot of dissemination work, a lot of, open, you have to be open to the society, not staying in the lab, and gradually results come, but it takes time. It takes time. Also, we did a lot of seminars in many areas of Greece, and there we showed them things in the field. All these were class and field seminars. So this again created small groups in every area of the Greece that were our ambassadors, and they helped us also to spread the new knowledge. So I'm really optimistic that through long-term intense work, and if you have, if you are open to the society and you do a lot of dissemination work, farmers start to change mentality and good things spread.
Great, thank you. And we have time for one more question about the presentations. One more.
Two questions. The first for Jaime.
We just can do one question at this moment right now, sorry.
All of this is about enabling farmers to carry on farming olives where they are. Who is looking at the areas on the earth which will become suitable for olives as it warms?
Who is this question to this?
Yeah, sorry, I couldn't hear you. Could you repeat your question?
All of this is about helping farmers to continue farming olives as the world gets hotter and drier. Who is looking at the new areas on the earth which will become suitable for olives in the future?
Who are you directing your question to? You. Me? Oh, great. So the question is, who is looking at the new areas of cultivation?
I can help you.
Sure. Go ahead.
I could say that the International Olive Council has a huge network of countries throughout the globe, traditional co-growers and newcomers, and they do a lot of work to the newcomers to see what are they try to establish a lot of varieties and see which are more suitable, and they provide a lot of training and a lot of capacity building to help new countries improve their growing. So the key player is the International Olive Council in this sense.
As far as the United States, I can tell you that olive cultivation is expanding across the U.S., and what we're seeing is there is an extensive need for more research on the future cultivation areas. So for example, prior to coming to UC Davis, I was looking at adaptation of cultivars for Oregon, which is a much colder weather. And interestingly enough, with global warming, we've seen that our season has expanded, and a lot of the growers are expecting that it will become a region that is much more amenable to olive production in the future. Now, all of this has to be validated, of course, by scientific studies. And in California, of course, you're seeing that in the northern latitude of California, you continue to see expansion of the crop. So this could be a coordinated effort. I think the solution for worldwide research would be to look at these from a consortium of scientists around different countries, to look at their different regions and microclimates to see what the future could be for that expansion to new locations where maybe it hasn't been traditionally grown. Thank you. Great. So now we have a couple of topics that we wanted to touch and I wanted to present to the panel so that you can give us your opinion. And the first one is, compared to other crops, olives have some advantages that can increase production in certain regions, but it also can make it quite vulnerable in other regions. What are your thoughts on the potential of the olive crop and olive crop production for addressing climate change challenges now and in the future?
Okay.
Yeah, you can start.
Okay. Okay. What is very interesting in the olive trees is that this is a very hardy crop, so it's very well adapted to poor soils, to low rainfall, to difficult environments. So This is why actually olive tree has been used to employ marginal land that is not suitable for the very profitable crops. So this is a good indication that it is hardy and it is good to respond to climate stresses. And this, and also taking into consideration that olive trees have lived for 1,000 years on this planet. Imagine how many stresses they have faced, how many difficult conditions they have faced, and they are still here. Generation after generation of humans were born and died and born and died, and an olive tree stands there and say, ask me about the history, and I will tell you 1,000 words, 1,000 stories. So, in my opinion, and compare it with other crops that every 30 years or every 20 years you have to uproot the trees and put new plants. This is impressive. If you see other crops that they say 30 years old, you have to, it's too old. Throw it away and put new plants. This is not in the olive trees. If you prune the tree, it's productive forever. So this is a good sign that olive tree can stand not only present climate change and present stresses, but maybe for 1,000 years to come. And our role would be to help, to give a hand to this tree.
Great, thank you.
I will connect it to the last question. So it's true that probably there are new areas that can be served to grow olive, but it's not a solution. So it's not that we will move all the olives a bit north and everything will be fine. We need to understand that the olive culture is much more than just make money. It's a tradition. It's way a lot more. And in many cases, especially in the Mediterranean area, we don't have any alternative. So anyway, the olives will stay where they are now. Maybe they will spread a bit north also, but we definitely need to find a solution how to grow them in this difficult climate, even if with all this changing. And this is why we are here for, I think. We will find the solutions.
Great, thank you. And this leads to the next topic of conversation that I have here. With drought increasing, having less availability of water, hotter and longer summers, as well as sometimes colder winters and flooding, where do you panelists see the crop in 20 years and in 40 years? What are your perspectives for the crop in the future that is coming ahead?
Should we give Mounir the...
Yeah, Mounir.
Just advance some indicator of climatic change. The progressive tropicalization of the Mediterranean climate, high winter temperature, and flood season, extreme weather condition, and some consequence. Higher heat than normal results in early flowering. Colder days can freeze flower and prevent flowering and fruit development. The productivity is reduced and the yield of the olive oil reduced also. Severe attack by the fly of the olive tree, Bacteria olea, and the quality of the olive oil is deteriorated. Some adequation measure to climate change. We must start restricting processes for the older olive tree, because the olive tree is very vulnerable to the climatic change, and the crop, the yield is become reduced. Adaptation to the climate by rational soil management, mechanization and amendment technique. Find cultivar with built-in tolerance to extreme temperature, and integrating adaptation to climate change into planning. And finally, awareness and education. For we must education the climatic change for the future generations.
This is also a great opportunity to thank our panelists because they are really looking at doing the research that is needed worldwide for adaptation. This is not something that we're going to solve tomorrow, and climate change is going to continue to happen. So first, let me thank you all for this. You were going to say something, Giora?
What I can say is, first of all, in olives, we don't look on spaces of 10 or 20 years, but hundreds years. And as I say before, we are here to stay. What I think is that we will start to look on the olive orchard, as Giorgios really mentioned in his talk, as a whole system, ecosystem, which keeps the environment, which keeps the carbon source, and this is more or less it. But again, as Mounir said, we will identify the resistant cultivar, and it's really important to keep the olive orchards exactly where they are.
And actually, olive trees will survive and will stay there. Climate change is a message to us that we can improve the way we grow the trees. Trees will stay there, and we should improve our role.
This is something very interesting to me because in all of your regions you have been growing olives for hundreds and thousands of years. In California, we've been growing them for a lot less. So our way of our agricultural production systems are very different, and they're also very based on the market. So something that was brought to me was also to ask you about disasters. And for example, what happened in Greece this past year with the fires. And how are your respective regions preparing for extreme challenges such as fires or droughts or flooding, right? And how is there anything in the pipeline to deal with these kind of challenges?
Actually, the rule is that usually policies are oriented, the disaster comes first, and then we try to give money to recover the disaster. They don't like to organize preventing the disaster.
Mm-hmm.
The scientists and the people who knew the problems always say, come on, get prepared, we have to do this. For example, about the fires, we should do forest management, we should do clearance of several, we know what to do. In every disaster, we know what to do to prevent the disaster, but usually the policy, the people who have their hands to make decisions, they don't do something preventive, but they pay money to recover. This is not very a good message, but this is what I observe. I don't know if you have a different...
No. I just want to say that, well, not talking about fire, but for example, specific pest or specific conditions, I think the secret is biodiversity. And this is really important. And actually, we are part of a group that the IOC organized of germplasm bank, and we all keep a really high diversity, and not only in one place, but in several places. And I think this is connected to the prevention that we need to do before the disaster is coming.
Great, thank you. So now we will open the floor to the public again. And if you have any more questions and if you want to add to these different topics that we're discussing, please.
Thank you all for a great presentation. I think they're really great topics. What I want to ask is, goes both to Giora and George. George mentioned about ground cover, maintaining a green ground cover or putting mulching. I wonder how that affects, Joran, if you looked at how that affects the temperature at the canopy, and if that improves or reduces the increase in the temperature on the canopy, which will make it less of a problem for climate change.
Yeah, it's true. I didn't look on it. I already heard it from some people, and I need to. I don't know the answer yet, but it definitely, this is one of the solutions that we will check.
Thank you very much. It's really, really interesting. I've just been noticing there's a difference in opinion possibly on tilling. And I'd just like to know what all of your opinions are on tilling. You talked about deep tilling, minimizing tilling, what the overall idea on tilling is.
Yes, actually, the efficiency of this practice depends on the soil, on the water availability. I guess that in the very dry areas like northern Africa, the tillage has been established as a good practice to save water in the soil, right? So probably their experience indicated that this is a good practice for their conditions. I have no experience in these conditions. I cannot say that what Northern African countries do is correct or it is incorrect, because they know their conditions better. In our case, I have clear results that minimizing or eliminating tillage is the best option. But I cannot say what happens
in order to optimize the carbon balance.
Not only that, in order to have the soil in its best quality, in its best condition. And also, we showed very good results in water storage in the soil. Of course, I don't mean this is about soil tillage, about retention of weed flora on the soil. This is again very important to highlight that I'm talking about seasonal retention of the weeds. Of course, we don't let the weeds grow during summer because we would have a huge consumption of water and a huge competition with olive trees.
Two different things we have to look at, right? We have to look at whether it's releasing carbon and whether it's helping the plant, right? So maybe
yes, but
the plant and what possibly is long term for the soil and what's good for the plant, right?
Yeah. And in both cases, protecting the soil from tillage and leaving natural cover by weeds through the rainy period from autumn to spring, it's beneficial. It's more after that you have to eliminate the weeds because you need more water stored in the soil. But in all the cases we studied, minimized tillage and soil cover with organic materials was very beneficial.
You want to expand a little bit on tillage in Tunisia?
For the fragile soil, we must reduce the frequency of tillage and diversification of the tools. We don't use the same tools for the 100 years.
Maybe in such marginal low precipitation that these countries face, maybe it's 100 millimeters or 200 millimeters, something like that yearly, maybe it's out of question to add more plants in your agro-ecosystem. Maybe you noticed in the presentation of Mounir that they said 15 trees per hectare, something like that, yeah. Right? 20 trees per
24
hectare. This is mean one tree here and one tree 5 minutes walk later. So it's out of question to add cover crops or to add plants, because every single drop of water that you may have, you have to save it for your olive trees. There is no rainy season to have excess rainfall water and use it. So it's a completely different situation where it requires a specific management.
Great. Any more questions from the public?
Okay, just a comment to reinforce what has been explained here concerning the effects about oil content in the fruits. In the case of Arbequina in Catalonia, we have been involved during the last 5 years following massively what happens at the end of the mills, sampling fruits, and in average, what we can say now, that these are not only theories, but in Catalonia at least, the average yield for Arbequina now, instead of being 20%, it's 15% at the end after the extraction process, because we have two problems. One is a lower fat content in the fruit, and then a worse behavior of the past in the mills. So this is really worrying, because that means that all the economical studies that our companies are running are based on a 20% basis, and a loss of 5% means a loss of quarter of that, which is really important.
Great. Thank you. And I think
we have one more.
That's the question.
Okay.
Hi. I just had a quick question about what do you think your recommendation is to translate this research to the ground? Because I feel like there's a disconnect between the coping mechanism that farmers use noticing the climate change and the lowering of the yields, and what actually the good practices they should be adapting. They're using knowledge that is maybe out of date, and irrigation is increasing, and digging of wells in some areas where we should not do that. But the practices are not really up to date with what the research is showing now. What do you think we should do to reconnect the knowledge with the practices?
And that's always the key. This is something that we were actually discussing the other day, how to increase adoption by farmers. Any thoughts?
Yeah, clearly demonstration. To pick a very good farmer in every village, let's say, and make a demonstration olive grove to all the good practices, and let the other people see the living example that, look, this guy does something different than us and has better results. It's a living experiment. You don't have to tell them, do this, this is good. Oh, you do is bad. They never, change this way. Make a good result, a good example. They observe, they see the difference, and then they apply. I think this has tremendous results.
I agree. All the info days for the farmers should be outside, not in a closed room. And definitely, if you will show him another farmer that success, it will be the best example.
Yeah, we've seen the same experience in California. The farmers tend to, not only farmers, but also processors tend to adopt practices that they see are already used as a good example in another farm. So I think that's a really, really great technique. Great. Well, thank you so much for everything. Thank you, panelists. We really appreciate your help with all of these today. It was a great conversation. And now we're going to let Jaime take over the next section. And thank you all for your participation.